This led to their famous rallying cry, "No taxation without representation." The colonists were furious. They organized protests, boycotted British goods, and formed groups like the Sons of Liberty. The pressure worked. Parliament repealed the Stamp Act, but at the same time, they passed the Declaratory Act, basically saying, "We can still make laws for you whenever we want." The tension didn't go away. Next came the Townshend Acts in 1767, which taxed things like glass, lead, paint, and tea. More boycotts, more protests. Things got heated. In 1770, a confrontation between British soldiers and colonists in Boston turned deadly. It became known as the Boston Massacre. 5 colonists were killed. This event was used as powerful propaganda by patriots like Paul Revere to show British tyranny. After a few years of relative calm, the conflict roared back to life with the Tea Act of 1773. This wasn't a new tax on tea. Instead, it was designed to help the struggling British East India Company by giving it a monopoly on tea sales in the colonies. Even though the tea was cheaper, the colonists saw it as another trick to make them accept Parliament's right to tax them. This led to one of the most iconic events of the Revolution, the Boston Tea Party. In December 1773, a group of colonists disguised as Native Americans boarded 3 ships in Boston Harbor and dumped over 300 chests of tea into the water. It was a bold act of defiance. Britain was not amused. Parliament responded with a series of harsh measures known as the Coercive Acts, or as the colonists called them, the Intolerable Acts. These acts closed Boston Harbor until the tea was paid for, restricted town meetings in Massachusetts, and forced colonists to house British soldiers. This was the final straw for many. Instead of isolating Massachusetts, the Intolerable Acts united the colonies. In 1774, delegates from 12 of the 13 colonies met in Philadelphia for the First Continental Congress. They agreed to a coordinated boycott of British goods and sent a petition to King George III, hoping for a peaceful resolution. But they also started preparing for the worst. The spark that ignited the war came on April 19, 1775. British troops marched from Boston to Concord, Massachusetts, to seize colonial military supplies. They were met by local militiamen known as Minutemen at Lexington and Concord. The shot heard round the world was fired, and the American Revolutionary War had begun. The Second Continental Congress met soon after. They established the Continental Army and, in a crucial decision, appointed George Washington as its commander-in-chief. Washington wasn't the most experienced general, but he was respected, determined, and a powerful symbol of colonial unity. Still, not everyone was ready for a complete break with Britain. Many hoped for reconciliation. But that changed with the publication of a pamphlet called Common Sense by Thomas Paine in early 1776. Paine's powerful, simple language argued that independence was not just an option, it was a necessity. He called monarchy a foolish system and urged Americans to create a new kind of government based on liberty. Common Sense was a runaway bestseller and swayed public opinion dramatically. Inspired by these ideas, on July 4, 1776, the Second Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence. Written primarily by Thomas Jefferson, this document did more than just declare a separation. It laid out a revolutionary philosophy that all men are created equal, with rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that governments get their power from the consent of the governed. Declaring independence was one thing, winning it was another. The war was long and brutal. The Continental Army faced incredible hardships. They were poorly trained, poorly equipped, and often went without pay, food, or proper clothing. They were up against the best-trained, best-equipped army in the world. The early years of the war were tough for the Americans. They suffered major defeats, like the loss of New York City. But there were also moments of incredible resilience. On Christmas night in 1776, Washington led his troops across the icy Delaware River for a surprise attack on Hessian mercenaries in Trenton, New Jersey. This victory was a huge morale booster. The turning point of the war came in 1777 at the Battle of Saratoga in upstate New York. An entire British army was forced to surrender to the American forces. This victory was massive, not just militarily, but diplomatically. It convinced France that the Americans had a real chance of winning. So, in 1778, France officially allied with the United States, providing much-needed money, troops, and, most importantly, a navy. This turned the American Revolution into a global conflict, stretching British resources thin as they now had to fight France and later Spain and the Netherlands around the world. Even with French help, the war dragged on. The focus shifted to the southern colonies. Finally, it all came down to Yorktown, Virginia, in 1781. General Washington, with the help of French troops, trapped the main British army, led by General Cornwallis, on a peninsula. The French Navy blockaded the coast, preventing any British rescue or escape by sea. Surrounded and outnumbered, Cornwallis had no choice but to surrender. The surrender at Yorktown was the decisive blow. While some fighting continued, it effectively ended the war. Peace negotiations began in Paris. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris was signed. Britain formally recognized the independence of the United States and ceded all the territory east of the Mississippi River. The American Revolution was over. Winning the war was just the beginning. Now, the new nation had to figure out how to govern itself. Their first attempt, the Articles of Confederation, created a weak central government that struggled to manage the country's problems. So, in 1787, leaders met again in Philadelphia and drafted a new framework, the United States Constitution. This document created a stronger federal government with a system of checks and balances, and it remains the foundation of American government to this day. The American Revolution was more than just a war. It was a revolution of ideas that championed liberty, individual rights, and self-government. It inspired countless other movements for independence and democracy around the globe. It was a messy, complicated, and incredibly difficult struggle, but it created a new nation built on a radical premise that ordinary people could rule themselves. And that's a story worth remembering. Thanks for watching. If you found this explanation helpful, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. See you next time.